So I don't know if you're seeing this, but in real time, we're watching the deconstruction of the comic book industry, and we're seeing now the gloves are not the gloves, the mask. The mask is off now, and you're seeing an obvious hatred for men in general, and it's all coming out. Alex DeCampi on her Blue Sky account, she does that passive aggressive thing where she retweets people who say what she feels, but she doesn't have the convictions to say it herself. You have someone like a Jess Nevins who will say something, for example, like what some folks are forgetting is that the survival of one's career is different from survival of one's standing, and that it's perfectly okay if someone who's done bad stuff doesn't recover their standing, despite the fact that there are many successful female creators in comics, both in the mainstream and in the indies. I think of Irene Shokowski, aka Rini, who's got that book Fiendish out. She's done pretty good for herself. I've backed some female creators, including Ali Sanguis, who currently has Egg Beater. She's currently in production of that comic. I like horror comics, so that inspired me to get that. And then recently we had Trina Robbins, who passed away. She's a pretty well-known cartoonist and very well-respected and revered by a lot of people, especially those who were fans of Frank Rosetta and Vampirella fans. But we're talking about women today who don't really revere the history of comics, because comics history is very masculine. It's very man-centered. It is the demographics for its success have always been men, straight heterosexual men. And creators like Trina Robbins have always respected that. And now people are finally coming out and they're finally speaking out. Greg Smallwood, for example, a few days after Ed Piskor's tragedy, he says, "I'm done pretending that an apology or atonement gets you anywhere with these people. Tell me, Liam McGuire, did an apology change Warren Ellis' circumstances? How about Jason Latour's? How about Cameron Stewart? Brian Wood? There is no path, and you know it." And I talked a little bit about Warren Ellis. Again, you can check out my Alex DeCampi video where I go into Ellis. But he mentions a name here, Brian Wood. And I wasn't active on Twitter prior to 2018, but I was on Dark Gifts Comics channel last week, where on the Indie Slums stream, and he brought up Brian Wood. So he read me Brian Wood's letter, and I was floored by what I read and what Brian Wood had said. I was like, whoa, I did not know this. And before we get to Brian Wood, keep an eye on Tom Taylor. Interesting development with regards to Tom Taylor. And somehow he's kind of angered now the very people that he was catering to. Tom Taylor, if you don't know, is the man that gave us gay Jonathan Kent, the gay Superman. Taking a very heterosexual masculine character that had worldwide appeal and killing that audience and diminishing that audience by appealing to a very small demographic, of whom an even tinier percent of that small demographic only buys comics. And then they wonder why nobody's buying them and the sales are down. It's because if your belief is representation equals success, then it stands to reason that the people that you've pushed away by representing a smaller group is going to just walk away because they don't feel represented. And as a result, you lose money. So their own argument kind of destroys their standing, and it destroys the goal of, assuming that's their goal, of trying to create success in modern comics by appealing to a new demographic. But again, that demographic is very tiny. So Tom Taylor is facing, it appears he's facing cancellation. And a very curious video was put out by one of his fans turned detractors. Very curious video.
Bitch! God damn it, I done started a fire in this motherfucker!
Yeah, and you look at the accounts of the people that are tweeting at him, and so they all have something in common. I can't picture it. Aside from the fact that they protect their tweets after they put out very inflammatory, derogative, violent messages of harassment and violence and threats, they lock their Twitter accounts, but they also have something else in common. I can't quite put my finger on it. If I say it, I might get struck on YouTube, because that might be considered a certain kind of speech they don't tolerate. Because, we don't want to talk about the elephant in the room, but I will let you, the viewer, make up your minds on the similarities. I'll just leave it at that. But we go on to Brian Wood's newsletter, and very curious because when you look at the sexual harassment claims that were levied at him, it was one Tess Fowler who did that, and Brian actually talks about that incident, and he goes into it here. So we're going to just read a little bit of that, and we're going to first look at the what the accusation was. Tess Fowler, back in 2013, put out a series of very passive aggressive tweets. He talks about a writer who tried to get her up to his room at the San Diego Comic-Con by feigning interest in my pursuit of a comic. She says, the same guy who ran off my friends mid-conversation to get to me, then left me with his room number and told me he'd be waiting to get to know me better. Then the next day I walked by the booth with friends. He shouted at me in front of crowds of pros and fans that he'd waited for me, and where the fuck did I go? Needless to say, he was married with a pregnant wife at the time. I was young, naive, and hopeful, but not that naive. Later, we talked on Facebook, and he made fun of my art, letting me know that he had never had any interest in it to begin with. He was mad that I had been afraid of him. At the time, I liked the costume. I guess she was into cosplay. He told me I should be thankful he was talking to me and that he overlooked me dressing up like an idiot. I looked at his career and the way he's touted me as a feminist, and I cringe. I'm not the only woman who has had a run-in with him either. Kudos to you for speaking open and honestly. Mad respect. And then Tess Fowler told the writer Bleeding Cool, the behavior of the man in question, the man turned out to be Brian Wood, is considered normal in this business. And the few people who know about it consider it to be my fault for falling for it when he feigned interest in my work. In my pursuit of doing this work professionally, I ran a gauntlet of this sort of thing. I came in with stars in my eyes, and were it not for the handful of really good people who stepped in to keep me safe, I might not have made it through without being completely jaded by it. I am older now with young, impressionable followers of my own, and I do my best to help them over these kinds of hurdles when they arise. I wish more people were brave enough to speak out, but for every voice raised in protest, there are thousands to defend the person in question. It's daunting. So again, yeah. So she was trying to rally a group of women to, I guess, speak out on the quote unquote misogyny in the industry, and the thousands that are there to defend it. Well, yeah, because you're crying wolf. you're crying wolf. That's why. And by the way, a lot of those tweets, it looks like, have been deleted. So that's why you see the weird symbols on the Bleeding Cool page with the tweets, because those tweets are no longer active. They've been removed. And mind you, these are 9-year-old tweets. And then Brian Woods gave his account. And he says, Tess Fowler is correct about this. I did make a pass at her at San Diego Comic-Con, high bar roughly 8 years ago. But when she declined, that was the conclusion of the matter for me. There was never a promise of quid pro quo, no exertion of power, no threats, and no revenge. This was at a time in my career when I had very little professional power or industry recognition. The pickup was a lame move, absolutely, and I'll accept the heat for having done it. But that's all it was. I liked her, I took a chance, and was shot down. I immediately regretted it, and I apologized to Miss Fowler for the tackiness and embarrassment of it all. He also stated, I think the larger issues of abuse in the comics industry are genuine, and I share everyone's concerns. As a father to a young daughter showing an interest in making her own comics, I do really care about this stuff. So I don't want our difference of accounts to take attention away from the industry-wide discussion that needs to happen. And look at his comments he makes here with regards to the statements. He says, if I had to sum up the newsletter, a couple of lines, the newsletter is what brought attention to this. It will be something like, public shaming can be treacherous. If you need to do it, do it for the right reasons. If you do it for the wrong reasons, you won't get the results you need. It's no secret I hate public shaming and doxing and blackmail and similar attacks in politics, in religion, in any situation, including comics. I think it's ugly. It's been the subject of past newsletters, but this is not the same as saying that people shouldn't be punished if they transgress. Of course, people should report bad behavior. And then Bleeding Cool continues to say, while most people seem amused by the very sincere experience at CrossFit, the piece that most people seem to take objection to is probably this one. It's going to end with someone killing themselves. This was in 2015. Brian Wood put this out there in 2015. 9 years before Ed Piskor took his life. He says, it's going to end with someone killing themselves. This is what I said talking to a friend and comic industry insider about the current climate in comics, the pervasive nastiness that I've spoken about before. We were chatting on the phone about Nathan Edmondson, about the Nathan Edmondson thing specifically, and what the natural end to all this will be. Because the means at present do not support the end that people say they want. What they support is the continuation of the spectator sports style ugliness and will, I fear, only come to an end after some terrible event. And this tells me that this is not an isolated thing that he's going through. I think he's seen plenty that have not been publicly reported. And I think he knows exactly the circle that's in the industry that has the power to do this kind of shaming. And I think he understands how intense it is and why he would make the statement that it would end with someone killing themselves. And he concludes by saying, like most people who have spent time in the industry, I know who the bad guys are. Ask anyone who's been around 5, 10 years, and I guarantee they can rattle off a list of 20 people in comics who are the stuff of HR nightmares. Not some random dude in the trenches or some comic shop employee, but company executives, top people with actual hiring and firing power, and A-level creators who function as job creators. It's all just more cynical behavior, and it's why I believe that the stated ends will never be met by the currently employed means, and someone will probably kill themselves. And what's funny is that in this article, this is a 9-year-old article. Well, there was a comment by this commenter, Brainy Pirate, who says, why is this being recommended in 2024? And before I even clicked the reply, I already knew what this was a reference to. A link to Ed Piskor dying by the very thing that Brian Wood predicted would happen. Look at Tom Taylor. Pay attention to what's going on with Tom Taylor right now. Not that I have any sympathy for the guy. Again, he is part of the problem in the comic industry, and he's a big part of why comics are dying, why people are being turned away, and why this insensate negativity towards men is prevalent. And make no mistake, there is a humongous negativity towards men, and so much so that Mark Millar had retweeted Tom Taylor's tweet. Mark Millar said, there's a cruel sickness in the mainstream comic scene right now. This is horrific. Everyone I know is checking out and working elsewhere. That's what needs to happen. Now, I stated in a previous video, in the Alex the Camby video, I stated, let the industry die. One of the comment section was like, I disagree with you on that. And I think people misunderstand when I say let the industry die. Comics does not have to rely on the comic book industry. You can make independent comics. You could be like a McFarlane, get a group of artists or creators that have the money, the investment, and the experience, and produce your own, independent company and produce comics. That is possible. Probable, difficult maybe, but it's possible. So comics as a medium doesn't have to die, but the industry as it is, the mainstream industry, that needs to die. If people like Mark Millar are saying it, then it's a cancer that has to be eradicated. And Tom Taylor, as you can see, has definitely not liking his image being used as an effigy. But at the same time, Tom Taylor was part of the problem, and he has not spoken out on the very thing that he is now being the target from. And look what he said. These words are very interesting. In light of the Ed Piskor passing, look what he says. This is going to be the last negative anything I highlight or rise to on here for a while. But even if we don't meet your standards in entertainment, please try to remember there is a real person on the other end of your tweets. Similar language to what Ed Piskor said about him being a human being, a real human being. It's almost like they're putting it out there before they get off that, hey, we are human beings. And it's becoming, it's to a point, and I think with Ed Piskor's note, you can't hide the cancer anymore. You cannot hide it. And call it what it is. It's anti-male bigotry. It is anti-masculine bigotry. And no, I'm not saying, abuse of women is acceptable. I'm not saying sexual harassment acceptable, but neither is gaslighting or weaponizing those things either. A man makes a pass at you, he shoots a shot and probably stumbles upon doing it. It's not sexual harassment. It's a man shooting a shot. you're in a day and age where you can say no, and a man either has to respect it, or he then succumbs to some feminine emotional response where he feels he has to take it. And yeah, at that point, now you're dealing with an actual monster. But that's not all men, and that's probably a minority of men. And honestly, that is not the same as a man just trying to shoot a shot. And a lot of women that work in male-dominated industries know this about the men that work these industries. They know that men act a certain way. So you bring in a feminist mindset, and now you're creating an environment where masculinity is shamed, pushed out, and what you're left with is an environment where if a man steps out, he has to be conditioned, he has to be doctored, he has to be fixed. And even after he's fixed, it's still not good enough because, as you saw with the previous tweet I mentioned, those men deserve to lose their statuses, right? And people are now starting to see it. Like people who try to stick it out with the industry for as long as they could. Now they're pointing out the disturbing nature behind the mob mentality that's in the comic industry. The very anti-masculine, anti-Christian, anti-white male mob, and the sentiment that's behind it. You know, now the people are using the words alarming, depressing. They're trying to encourage this guy. This one tweet by Simboji, I think that's how I'm saying it. I could be mispronouncing it, but if this is a cry for help and also a plea for these people to touch some grass, I don't know what is. These gun sales are something else. Sad. It is very hard for people to look away from the violent nature of the mob that and the anti-masculine mob that is existing in the comic industry, as well as the very people that they're targeting as, well, not targeting, but that they're catering to, and they feel a sense of empowerment that is cause them to act out the way they are by putting out violent images, very harassing, threatening images, because they know they can get away with it. There's not going to be any accountability. There's not going to be any repercussions for it. And how dare anybody question their accounts? How dare anybody prove if this actually happened? If what Testfowler is saying is true, how dare anybody hold them accountable? How dare we make it for a woman to be responsible for actions that could lead to a man killing himself? Yeah, that happened. The man killed himself over allegations that turned out to be unverifiable in terms of whether or not he actually did anything wrong. Actually, no, it was proven that he didn't do anything wrong because his accuser actually confirmed that no, he didn't do anything wrong. Molly Dwyer confirmed that no, Ed Piskor was not a pedophile. He didn't harm her. He was just a creep, according to her own words. And then Molly Wright just confirmed that yeah, they were doing consensual sexual adult things together until she decided one day she didn't want to do it anymore. But the power of words means something. The power of isolation, again, rule number 5, Solinsky. The power of isolation means something. It was enough of Brian Woods 9 years before this incident to say that it's powerful enough to have something happen. It's powerful enough that someone could kill themselves over it. It's overwhelming. Being isolated, being marked, being told that to your industry, hey, you're a creep. Hey, you did something wrong to me as a woman, and more women are coming out. We're going to paint you as a creep. These words have power. They have meaning. Tom Taylor sees it now. And I'm sure now from this point on, whether you guys think that these comic book males in the current industry deserve what they get for contributing to an environment that has created the monster that is now coming after them, whether you think they deserve it or not, the fact of the matter is it's happening. Tom Taylor's the next guy now. You're seeing it in real time. He's being targeted. He's being marked for isolation. And it's very small, but it takes a small thing. All it takes is a small accusation. All it takes is a small voice. And it grows until you react to it. And all Tom Taylor has to do is react to it. And it'll probably be over for him. You know, a man can't make a career choice without being targeted now. This is the environment that's been fostered by male feminists. And yes, I talk about never trust a male feminist. And I had a commenter in one of those videos who said that he was a male feminist and he took issue with what I said. And look, I don't pretend to know every single person. You know, generalities are true. It doesn't mean it has to be, nothing has to be 100% for it to be the truth. In other words, if you make a general statement about people, it doesn't have to be general 100% for it to be true. For example, can an alcoholic driving a car get into a wreck? Yes. Is it true 100% of the time? No. But is it true more than 51% of the time? Yes. Therefore, it's generally true. So all you need is 51% or more for it to be generally true. And the general truth is male feminists don't trust them. Just don't trust them. You could be part of that 49% or lesser that is probably trustworthy with good intentions. Fine. But that doesn't mean that the 51% or more doesn't hurt it for the rest of you male feminists. And this is the environment that's been created. So yeah, pay attention to what's going to happen with Tom Taylor. See the growing resentment that occurs, and we'll keep an eye on it. I don't wish Tom Taylor harm. Whatever his politics are, whatever damage he's done to comics, or whatever damage he's done to the Superman brand, I don't wish him harm. I hope he escapes out of this. I think it's better for us to laugh at these people's misfortunes than to lament the tragedy that happens as a result of an angry, unrelenting, and unaccountable mob that doesn't that you don't if you don't placate them 100%, that if you don't placate them 100%, they'll come after you, and then all the gaslighting terms come out. So anyway, thank you for watching, and if you have a comment, please leave a comment. I want to hear what you got to say. Like and subscribe if you haven't done it, and we will talk soon. And if you're a comic creator, please make comics. Continue to make comics. I like making comics. I like drawing comics. I'm currently on the second Road Warrior Drake book, Beast Citizen Road Warrior Drake. And I want to continue doing it. I want to have fun doing it. And I think in order to have fun, you got to separate from the industry and just go where the indies are where it's at. It's where it's at. So thanks for watching. We will talk soon. Take care.